It's that time again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City Council regular meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is now 6:30 p.m. Please stand and join me for the flag salute. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll call?
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Here.
Councilmember Martinez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem McQueen Lejeune.
Here.
And Mayor Perez.
Here. We will now hear public comments not pertaining to items on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. This process will be the same for comments pertaining to each agenda item. Madam Clerk, does anyone have any public comment tonight?
We do have one, but I don't know if you wanted to scroll back real quick for the.
Oh, sorry. Inspiration. But this is really loud. Is it echoing?
No.
It sounds like it's echoing to me.
It would have been quite all right if you missed me tonight.
So our inspiration tonight will be given by Mayor Pro Tem Martha McQueen Lejeune.
Okay, so you all, if you have heard an inspiration from me before, I usually write it down. I've checked all my spell check and periods and crossed the T's and dots the I's. Well, I didn't do that this time. I've been thinking in the last couple of days, what did I want the inspiration to be? And it just came to me today. And so I was reflecting back on some conversations that I've had with some friends and a long conversation I had with my son on yesterday. And we talked a little bit about just ourselves. How do we show up for people, anyone? And so my inspiration today, I'm just going to share a little bit about that, if you don't mind. And as we quickly approach, I can't believe it's almost the end of the year already, 2024, It's crazy. But as we approach the end of the year, and let's see, the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we all have different reasons or different philosophies about how you celebrate and why you celebrate those days, right? So it's not always the same for everyone. And so as I move closely to the end of the year, and we're going to hear a proclamation later, and so there's also something I want to share about that as well, but I think about just being thankful, right? For all things, being thankful. And so I started thinking about what are the things that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that while I don't have my father, I still have my mother. While I have a sister that's ill, I have another 5 siblings that are doing very well. We're able to have food on the table. We're not homeless. And we are doing well enough that we can help others, right? And so those are some of the things that I'm personally thankful for. And then for a minute, I start thinking about sitting on the dais, a couple of times a month and learning all this new stuff and kind of some of the things that I'm thankful for as it relates to City Council. And so I had something special for you guys. So for Bobby, I so appreciate you, and I'm thankful for the flyer that you sent me today. I really love arts and the idea that you would share something for me and I can actually go out and do some of the things that I like to do. I appreciate that. Stephen, for always sharing what you think might be important to me. So I love it when you call me and we talk about things, and I feel most precious because you feel that you can call me. So I appreciate that. Laura, for always providing me information that you think might be helpful to me as a new council member or 2 years in. So I appreciate that. And for our mayor, I appreciate you always giving me the time to think through my thoughts, because I'm not a quick talker. I don't talk a lot, so it takes some time for me to think about the things that I want to say. So I appreciate you for giving me that time. So giving thanks is really important. So let's all continue to give thanks for the things that we have. And not only give thanks, but also say thank you to people, right? Say thank you when someone opens the door for you, right? Or you're at the grocery store and instead of putting your cart back in the rack, someone gives it to you, right? Or if you drop something and someone reaches down and picks it up for you. Or if someone carries something for you that's too heavy, whether that's a metaphor or whether it's actually something that's too heavy. Be thankful for that and say thank you. Or anytime someone just helps you do anything, say thank you. That helps you I know sometimes I'm sitting and I'm trying to get my clothes on and I can't really get my jackets on, then someone will come and try to help me put my arm in my jacket. Say thank you for that. And so as we continue all to move to the end of this year and enter into the season, think about the people who don't have, right? Who don't have their health and don't have their strength and don't have food, don't have a home to sleep in, don't have their health, don't have their children anymore, or don't have their parents anymore. Just think about the things that you could be thankful for and then say thank you. And the last thing I'll say is as we enter into this Thanksgiving season, remember, again, we're going to have the proclamation later, but remember Thanksgiving to some Native Indians are a day of mourning. So while we're celebrating, just know that not everyone is celebrating with us. So thank you.
Thank you, that was beautiful. Now we will go to public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments tonight?
We have one written public comment. Good evening, City Council members. Your leadership in 2024 is appreciated. Spring, summer, and now fall. I've looked for updates on the municipal website below the header, City Spotlight. You can see there's a hyperlink to storm recovery update. February 8th, 2024 is the most current posting with SCE information added. 9 months have passed without a newer posting. In the spirit of transparency and to boost local comprehension of recovery, here's some topics I request you address in a year-end update. First, questions about those damages and losses in which city operations were a factor. How many claims has the city received since December 21st, 2023? How many of those claims have been rejected as of November 15, 2024? How many of those claims have been fully processed? How many claims are still in limbo, neither fully processed nor rejected? What matters most to the city upon receiving a claim related to stormwater runoff? Next, a broader spectrum of questions. What risks should citizens be wary of as we move toward the season when fresh incidents of stormwater runoff difficulties are most likely to occur? What challenges, if any, is the city positioned to handle differently during the next storm season? Priorities. What challenges will the city face in the same way as last winter? Examples. What was the typical water level for Sumas Creek years ago before the creek's renaming? What level is now the norm for Sumas Creek? How frequently is the creek level measured in conjunction with J Street pumping operations or other stormwater management concerns? Were certain resiliency improvements or remedies for runoff infrastructure explored during the past 9 months? Are any operational measures or innovations shortlisted for consideration in the near future? If the city is in the loop with the state and the federal SBA loan program some local households opted to pursue, can the city provide a participant tally? Among those homeowners, vehicle owners, or other property owners now enrolled in federal loans, are local loans that are unsecured beneath a $17,000 threshold more plentiful, or are secured loans above the threshold more plentiful? If the city has intelligence on folks facing relocation beyond city limits as a result of damages and losses, can the number of households be shared with the public? The spectrum of questions could shift direction with further input. Questions listed herein are posed while bearing in mind a vision of affordable housing. Alas, housing supply may shrink abruptly if stormwater management shortcomings arise. If city leadership seeks improvements for stormwater management, but folks are clueless as to how or when actions may occur, households may rush to scope out relocation plans to avoid repeats of recent events. I request an update be posted on the municipal website so that the story as told in February 2024 is not the endpoint for current or prospective citizens and businesses to grasp the aftermath of last winter storm impacts. Thank you, Dulce Sutterfield, and that concludes public comment.
Mayor, if I can just comment on a couple things very briefly. I know it's not on the agenda, so we can't fully respond, but we actually have under the city manager's report tonight, we're going to be updating on a couple of storm preparedness efforts that we've been working on, including literally today. The timing of this comment is great timing because some of the things we've been working on for quite a while were accomplished in the last 48 hours, including working with the county to have the channel cleared out in advance of any storm this year. That was accomplished this morning. So we'll have some information on that and some photos. And I think there's four quick points I wanted to note. One is that we've been working with the county to get the channel cleared. We'll have information on that. We've been working on our own Bubbling Springs project, even within those very tight windows that we have in place due to all the federal regulations. And we have an item on the agenda today to even kind of expedite that. So we've still been working on that Bubbling Springs Creek issue. We had our first CERT Community Emergency Response Team Preparedness Training graduation this weekend. And then one thing is we will be doing a post talking about some of these things, but also reminding people of some steps they can take. I think one of the things we learned in the last storm that unfortunately we all learned the hard way is that homeowners insurance actually doesn't cover a lot of the damage that was caused. And so we've been talking to Oxnard and Ventura, the county of Ventura, about trying to get the word out to everybody that they may want to look at flood insurance protection. So we're going to be doing a post where we tell people what we're doing, but also recommend some things they might want to look into. So we'll have a little more information on that later. We'll do some posts on that, and then we'll keep trying to get the word out on storm preparedness. As we heard today that there could be the first rain coming this weekend. So it's something we've been working to get ahead of. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight?
May I make a comment or a question?
Sure.
Regarding item number one, first of all, I just want to say that my wife is a card-carrying member of Comanche Nation, and she works for the Owens Valley Native American Career Center, providing needed services to Indian families and children throughout Ventura County of all tribes. When we approved this, I thought it was going to cover all Native American peoples in our area. And so I noticed that the proclamation takes a turn towards the Chumash. I just have one question. Did we seek guidance from the Chumash Tribal Council on this proclamation?
We did not.
There is no tribal council.
There is, actually.
No, there's not. And I can ask Misty to, I'm not Misty, I can ask Casey to address that, but,
So if I may reclaim my,
I
Okay.
spoke to the chair yesterday. There is a tribal council.
it's not federally recognized.
so my point of bringing this up is to recognize all Native American groups. That's what I thought this proclamation was doing. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
I would ask that this discussion on item one be withheld until we get to item one, and then we can have a further full discussion.
Yes. Thank you. So can I have a motion and a
Move
second?
to approve?
And a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Or Madam Clerk, please call for the vote.
All in favor? All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest to disclose for any item on the agenda? Not seeing any, we'll move on to the presentation. The presentation tonight is the Indigenous Peoples Month Proclamation, and that will be given by Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor, and it is my honor tonight to read the Indigenous Peoples Month proclamation, which recognizes all Indigenous people, but especially those First people in the area of Port Hueneme, which are the Chumash. And I'll begin now. Whereas November marks the 57th annual celebration of Indigenous Peoples Month, recognizing 100 years of citizenship and the fight for the right to vote from 1924 to 2024. And whereas this year's Indigenous Peoples Month commemorates the moment when 100 years ago, Native Americans were conferred citizenship in the United States of America, and with it, the right to vote in the state of California. And whereas in these last 100 years, we have witnessed California, tribal nations, and Native American individuals fully embracing their potential in this collective democracy. And whereas the Chumash Nation and the Chumash people are the first known inhabitants and rightful original stewards of this land we call Port Hueneme, and whereas the Chumash Nation utilized the area known as Wainimu and Wainima as a trading route and resting place for voyagers to the Channel Islands and other surroundings on the Central Coast. And whereas Chumash tribal culture and language is still alive through people, song, storytelling, and ceremony, and whereas Chumash people are still walking amongst the many other people who have come to call Ventura County their home, and whereas the city of Port Hueneme recognizes the rich cultural history of the Chumash and understands that in the present day we continue to enjoy the rich legacy of regional commerce, environmental stewardship, and preservation of our land and waters, and whereas the federal government in 2024 established the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, which stretches along 116 miles of California coastline and has been home to coastal ocean-going tribal nations and indigenous peoples for tens of thousands of years, and whereas we have seen the first California Native American elected to the state legislature and heard Native languages echoing in the halls of the state capitol. We have welcomed back condor, beaver, and wolf populations on California tribal lands, and we have seen dynamic Native leaders reclaiming their place throughout this state on local and county boards and judicial offices. And whereas this land and ocean composing the city of Port Hueneme will continue to be home to the Chumash Nation and all of indigenous nature and species, and where it is with deep respect and gratitude that we gather here today and acknowledge that it is our greater responsibility to take care and protect this land. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council and the City of Port Hueneme does hereby acknowledge November as Indigenous Peoples Month, that the land on which we are gathered here today is the home and traditional land belonging to the Chumash Nation. And while Julie Tumamite Stensley, the Chumash traditional Chumash elder, was invited to receive this proclamation, she has sent Casey Rodriguez in her stead to receive the proclamation. And I'd like to invite Casey up to say a few words.
Haku, hello. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to your arrived service among the Indigenous peoples community. I am honored to be present here tonight to receive this proclamation under the blessing of my traditional Chumash elder, Julie Tumamite Stensley. I sincerely thank you, Council, for this proclamation tonight. For over scientifically proven 19,000 years, Chumash people have been one with the surrounding land. Our story first begins on Lamu, or what you call today Santa Cruz Island. As a Chumash woman, I'm aware of the beauty of being able to walk with my ancestors daily, and I give thanks especially to my great-grandmother, Juana Maria Rodriguez. Because of her steadfast and resilient prayers, I have been blessed with this life. A life where I have a birth obligation to always be a good representative of all who paved the way. This includes self-reflection, maturity, and accountability. During my previous council visit, some misinterpreted my passion for something else. For those individuals, please understand it was unintended. This prestigious recognition tonight is a moment that will continue to inspire Chumash individuals like myself who are fostering a collaborative spirit and igniting a passion for sharing our culture, traditions, and stories, promoting unity and understanding within our community. Hueneme translates to resting place, yet I inspire the council to acknowledge what our county's pressing need for collective action and knowledge sharing, aligning with my ancestors' traditions. For over 19,000 years, my ancestors have paid dedicated stewards of this land, cultivating a legacy of respect, compassion, and harmony with all living beings, including the land and water. While warmly welcoming all who have traveled here, in honor of them, we must continue to live in this manner and work together for a better and brighter, inclusive tomorrow. I know I'm dedicated to doing my part. Please join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. And if we could, can we get a photo, please? Oh, you have a camera? Okay. Oh. She doesn't have to stand alone.
Oh, you can.
Yep, right in front, right here. Sorry. Right in front.
I'm sorry.
Get some higher shoes. Jeez. Did you tell her to get some higher shoes?
Thank you. We will now consider items on the consent calendar, which will be enacted in one motion unless a council member has a request to remove an item for discussion. Do any members of council have a request to remove an item for discussion?
Move to approve?
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move on to public hearings. The public hearing tonight is to the introduction of an ordinance approving amendments to Article 10 of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code with regard to affordable housing regulations and to revise the mixed-use density, or R4, zoning standards, to repeal the city's accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and to rezone certain properties to be consistent with the general plan land use map, and to approve the addendum to the environmental impact report previously prepared for the general plan update project. Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law and a complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, audience, and thank you for reading that. And we can discuss the recommendation towards the end here. Again, it's a long one, though it's not as long as the last one, and there's only one ordinance attached this time.
I appreciate that.
So as you mentioned, this is meeting number 2 with regard to discussing changes to the zoning ordinance as well as rezoning certain properties here in the city of Port Hueneme with regard to meeting our general plan and its housing element, as well as many new state laws with regard to boosting production of new housing units of all types for all income levels statewide. So to comply with these laws, the city's housing element, which was approved by the City Council in October of 2021, and then certified by the state's Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD, in October of 2022, there are 21 programs to basically encourage the production and rehab of new and affordable housing units for all incomes here in the city. At our last meeting, the City Council approved an ordinance, as you'll recall, to allow employee and supportive housing by right, to make a minor update to the density bonus ordinance with regard to senior housing definitions, and to make the inclusionary housing ordinance applicable citywide, whereas it had been only applicable to coastal zones prior. Therefore, we had met 2 additional programs, and so we're up to meeting 15 programs now. They're either completed or they're ongoing. Tonight, we're going to bring that total up to 20, and so we'll only have 1 remaining, and hopefully we'll get that to you by the end of this year. So as a reminder, the housing element is required by state law. In fact, it's the only element of a general plan that needs to be updated on a regular basis. It's called a cycle, and it's 8 years. Part of that is that it's basically based around what's called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and the state basically puts together how many units a region needs to meet, and in this case, it's the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. SCAG then divvies that up amongst the jurisdictions within its area. For the city of Port Hueneme, we have to meet basically plan for 125 new residential units within our 8-year housing cycle. So it doesn't sound like many, especially when you consider cities like Oxnard have to meet or plan for thousands, but we're built out and we're small. So 125 units is quite a bit, especially since our last cycle was 2 units. So this is a breakdown of the different income types and what the units are. So with regard to the background here, why we're here this evening too, is that our municipal code also requires that any land uses that are situated within the coastal zone that are affected also have to, they basically constitute an amendment to our local coastal program. So once we're done here, then staff will need to apply to the Coastal Commission and have them approve all of these changes that are going through this evening as well. And I'll talk about the deadlines in a little bit more detail later on, because there is a fairly significant one that needs to be met, and so that's why we're doing all of this now. We're starting the process now. So our first amendment that we're discussing this evening is, there's a lot of text here, but it's actually fairly simple, and it's got to do with replacement housing. And Assembly Bill 1397, along with the government code, basically requires the replacement of any affordable housing units that were identified in the city's housing element sites inventory, as well as for any parcel for which a density bonus is proposed. So our sites inventory identified 2 parcels that have residential units on them. However, those sites, neither one of them have an actual affordable housing agreement with them, so we don't know specifically if they are actual affordable units or not, so they could be. We also don't know for sure if projects down the line will take advantage of the density bonus laws that are taking basically in effect now, but it is presumed that they probably will be, because the state is very, they make it basically, applicants basically, they make it very easy for applicants to go through the density bonus process at this point. In fact, some of the standards that we'll be talking about in a little bit, they actually could have been even more say denser and whatnot, but we tried to keep them at a certain level because we also knew that these density bonus laws could have, could allow additional development on top of what we're already requesting here. So, so we have to assume that there will be additional development under these laws here. And so, simply put, after all that, we are proposing that there be a new section added to the code that basically requires that any new affordable or any existing affordable units that are going to be torn down, that they simply be replaced. And so that is with section 10804. Now that is actually now the inclusionary housing ordinance that we just approved at our last meeting. So that'll be moved to section 10805. So with all that, that's staff's recommendation for that to address our replacement housing requirements per state law. Now this is probably the meat of this discussion here this evening, and this is our R4 standards. R4 is our residential mixed-use zone. And this exhibit here shows where our current R4 properties are located. They're along East Pleasant Valley, I believe it's East Pleasant Valley Road, basically from San Pedro at the west to just before Ventura Road, where you've got the Casa Pacifica project, basically along the this area here to the east. And so We have several of the city-owned properties, vacant properties in this area here. The Habitat project is located here. And what we're looking at needing to do based on our general plan and also based on state law is to expand these areas to several other areas within the city. So we'll be discussing that this evening. So the three areas that we're looking at, and this again, these areas were specified in the general plan, so they already exist on the land use map that was approved in 2021. The three areas are basically up. Where's my little dot here? Here we go. So we've got the area up here at Patterson Channel Islands, which is where the Casa Villa Mar and the Racket Club and some commercial, including the Tradecraft dispensary, are located. The larger commercial area along Ventura and Channel Islands, KFC, the former 99-cent center, up to Bay Boulevard. And then down here in this area, which is what we are considering, or at least hoping will become the recreated downtown area, north of Port Hueneme Road, south of Scott, just across Market where the existing office building is, and also the few uses just across the street from the police department on the east side of Ventura Road. And these two exhibits kind of blow that up a little bit. So those are the two on the north side of town, and then the area on the south side of town. So why are we doing this? Well, again, really to meet state standards. And so we've got two, first of all, we've got two housing element programs, 5 and 15, which require the rezoning that I just showed you. And they also require the upzoning or increasing the density from 25 units per acre to 30 units per acre, and or providing one additional floor for project or for new development, basically. However, that would be additional project enhancements were provided by the developer, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. What those enhancements are in a little bit more detail. Program 16 is to allow supportive, transitional, and employee housing by right. And this is exactly the same as what we just did with the other residential zones at our last meeting. So as I mentioned in our last meeting, you may recall we kept out the R4 standard, so we can talk about that this evening. And then program 17, similarly, would be to allow low barrier navigation centers by right as well. And what those are is basically they're centers for homeless that provide all kinds of services so that a person who's experiencing homelessness can be connected with the right services to get them into housing as quickly as possible. And so those would also be allowed by right per Senate Bill 1395, which requires that they be allowed by right in mixed-use zones. AB 1397 also considers Port Hueneme to be a suburban jurisdiction. And that's a jurisdiction of less than 25,000 population, but within a larger metropolitan statistical area of more than 2 million. And with that definition, we are required to have a minimum density for our sites that were identified in the housing element at 20 units per acre. Currently, our mixed-use zone has no minimum. It's got a maximum of 25. So we do have to add that minimum 20 units per acre per state law again. So moving to the standards, I'm going to try not to make this too confusing, because a lot of this, what it is we kind of shifted standards or shifted sections, so to speak. So there were a few that were inserted in, so we had to shift a few more down the line, so to speak. So for instance, section 10460, which is the first one, which is called purpose, it stays the same. But then section 10461, we already have to shift the existing one down because we add a new section of definitions. So 10462 then become, what was conditional uses becomes what is now what we call the ministerial permitted uses. They were formerly just permitted uses. Basically the same. These are uses that are permitted by right. They don't require any discretionary approval. They're just basically what we call, a rubber stamp at the counter, so to speak. Now I want to stop here real quick because you folks, everybody should have received a letter from the attorneys that represent the Hueneme Bay Center. And, a purpose of all of this too, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, is we're basically upzoning here, so to speak. We're trying to keep all of our C1 commercial standards in place, but allowing additional residential standards on top of it, so to speak. And so this letter basically confirms that and that they're in support of that, but they did ask for a couple changes, minor changes to the text that was proposed in the ordinance to you. And so that was what was proposed in here. So the first section that they're asking, requesting changes to in Exhibit A was for, and I mentioned this here, but it was for 104.6.1, which is the permitted uses. They asked that we clarify and pull out the permitted uses within Section 104.8.1 that were existing as of January 1, 2025. And again, this basically just basically saying that all of the existing uses in the C1 zone will be, that are permitted uses now will be continued to be permitted uses. I also want to mention, I didn't earlier, but item C, which was condominiums, apartments, and townhouses, I want to also specify that that would be fewer than 6 units are allowed by right. Because when we go to the next section, it defines that those projects with 6 to 20 units would require administrative permits. I just want to put that clarifier in there as well. So, and then speaking of the next section, those are administratively permitted uses. And those basically would require some discretion, but they would be handled at staff level, either at my level with the director or through the Development Review Committee. And again, one change that the folks per this letter are asking for is to delete Section F altogether. And I mentioned that. And that is fine with staff because it's covered either in the previous change I just mentioned or it's handled in the conditional use permit section, which is coming up next. So, take a quick sip here. Excuse me. So the following section, with regard to conditional use permits, that is pretty much been modified fairly heavily because, again, we are looking at addressing several types of uses that we want to make sure that the City Council has discretion over, such as auto-oriented uses, uses that are currently requiring CUPs in the C1 zone, or larger residential and transitional housing types of uses. So we do add those in our conditional use permit section. Okay, trying to get myself back on track here. So then we have a new section, or basically renamed section, development standards. And the development standards are basically your setbacks, your heights, and whatnot. So, and with regard to that, to begin with, the base maximum density of 25 units per acre is not proposed to change unless the developer is agreeing to provide the project enhancements, which would allow them to potentially go up to 30 units per acre or add that additional story in height. The building height also, the base building heights would not change. Right now, they are 45 feet or 60 foot if there's a minimum 1/3 of the building is residential uses. But if, again, there were project enhancements provided, that could potentially go up one floor up to 75 feet height in maximum height. And we do add, though, the minimum density, though, of 20 units per acre here. The front yard standards would stay the same. Side and rear yard setbacks abutting residential zones would actually be reduced from 5 feet to 4 feet for buildings up to 2.5 stories in height. And then anything taller than that would be adding 1 foot of setback for each additional story. And this, again, is only if they abut residential uses. If they abutted, say, commercial uses, then there would be no setback requirement, and that's the current standard. And that would be current not only for the current R4 standards, but also for the commercial standards as well. And parking standards, landscaping standards would both remain unchanged as well. And then we do add new open space requirements, and I'll explain why these are a little specific in a minute here. But we recommend that they be a minimum of 200 square feet per unit, that they can be provided as both either private, common, and or both private and common. The common open space would have to have a minimum dimension of at least 15 feet in any direction, and the private would be a minimum of 50 square feet and no smaller than 4 feet in any dimension. And then new section 10466, that talks about objective design standards. And so what those are and why they're important is because as the state continues to strip away our local land use authority and make more and more of these uses that we're talking about here ministerial and permitted by right, the one thing they haven't taken away yet is our ability to at least look at the design of projects. And so that means that at least we can require these projects to at least have a, hopefully a high quality design, but only if they are per an objective design standard, meaning that the design standards, like the ones I just showed you for the outdoor area, are spelled out so that the planner reviewing the plans and the designer drawing them know exactly what they're basically drawing for. So the planner can no longer say, well, I want this color instead of this, or you need to make this this outdoor area, this dimension instead. In a lot of cases, we can't do that anymore per state law. We've unfortunately lost that that ability. But what we can do at least is provide as many of these standards as possible. Now, what I did when we were drafting these was I also thought, though, of how Wainini, how we've developed in the past and what our developers are like and whatnot. So we tried not to be too onerous at this time. If you look at cities like Ventura and Thousand Oaks, for instance, they've got page after page dealing with objective design standards for cottage type units and multifamily units and single families and courtyard homes and whatnot, and they just go into a lot of detail. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but but we may get there one of these days. This at least gets something on the board. The good thing is that these are just design standards. They don't affect uses in the coastal zone, so they won't need to go to the Coastal Zone Commission if we do want to change them in the future. But what we're presenting at least this evening is a starting point at least. Right now they are only for the R4 zone, but they can also easily be applicable to the rest of our residential zones as well. So, and so that section does then talk about standards again for building location, window design, parking lots, bicycle racks, all kinds of features, basically development features. So those are spelled out at least in the new section there for you. I didn't list them all out because this presentation is long enough as it is, and I didn't want to make it that long. But we also, the other thing we're talking about, as I've mentioned, there are the requirement that we allow for increased density and or building height, as we talked about, or basically incentives. But in order to get those incentives, the applicants have to provide project enhancements above and beyond the design and development standards we've just been talking about. And so section 10467 lists the requirements for that. So if a developer wants to either increase the density up to 30 units per acre or have that additional building height added to the project, they have to provide at least 3 project enhancements. If they want to do both, they'd have to add at least 5 of the enhancements. And the enhancements are listed out. I've listed a few here, for instance, providing a minimum of 20% of the units in the project be low income, having a minimum 1 acre lot size, and this would be, for instance, to consolidate lots into a larger project area, and usually those provide a better project design. Providing high quality architectural materials, and those are actually, some of those are spelled out in the code, again, being objective. Having 1 or more types of businesses that we're looking for in our economic development plan. Having a green project that's LEED certified. And several other features, again, that would need to be included in the project design in order to obtain these particular increases. And so finally, the last 2 sections, which were performance standards and pre-existing non-conforming standards, were simply relocated to the end of the chapter as they are now, and they were both just received minor clarifying revisions. So, do you want me to keep going? Did anybody have any questions? Before we get into rezoning, I just thought I'd take a break here.
Yeah, I probably need a break. And you have staff here who, it's just you today?
Just me,
Okay.
just me, yep.
So on page 17, design standards, I think you need a cross out there. It says 104646. I think the 4 needs to be crossed out.
When you do the redlining, that's how it looks.
Yeah,
It is actually redlined, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can see it on the other ones, I just couldn't see it there. And then this might be a silly question, but how many floors is 75 feet?
Honestly, it really depends on how high they want the ceilings to be and how they put their, the equipment within it and everything. So that's why we didn't actually specify the number of floors. We kind of left that open so that the designers could have some flexibility with
Do we
regard
have a
to
height
that.
limit? If 75 feet is the height limit, right?
Correct.
So,
So if we're thinking probably at least 10 feet per floor. But again, that could allow, for instance,
that could be
again,
like
roof
6
pitch or whatnot too.
6
So
floors, 5 floors?
most likely 5 to 6, yeah.
All right, thank you.
You mentioned upzoning, and I heard the term before, spot zoning, when I had a crazy idea. I didn't think it was that crazy. I thought it was a good idea. But I said, well, that would be spot zoning. So what's the difference between upzoning and spot zoning? And are they equal, the same? Are they good or are they bad?
They are different. One is good, one is bad.
Okay.
And it also depends on who you ask. Upzoning usually, in this case, all of this is upzoning. Basically what it means is that, and it depends on who you ask. If you're the property owner and you're being upzoned, usually it's a good thing because it means that you're allowed additional density, which means your property values go up. Now, maybe if you live next door or something like that, you may not think it's quite as good, but normally it's considered a good thing, at least for the property owners. Spot zoning, on the other hand, is not allowed by state law, so it's bad. And spot zoning is exactly what it sounds like. For instance, if you've got commercial uses, but you want to put a parcel, you want to just zone residential, or vice versa, you are not allowed to do that, basically.
So does commercial mean hotel?
In this case, yes. Yeah, they normally do.
So if there's a zone that has commercial, then that a hotel is commercial.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question I have, because this is all like, I know it's clear to you, but it's pretty crazy, I'll be honest with you. But I think about Mar Vista, clearly higher than 75 feet. How did that happen? No? Spot zoning?
I couldn't answer that.
But I think we agree it's higher than 75 feet, I think, right?
Honestly, I couldn't answer that question
I think
for
it's
you.
6,
yeah.
7, 8 floors, is it?
5 floors.
5 floors? Yeah, but
Yeah.
Probably like just almost.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I think it might be. It's probably capped out at 75 feet.
so prior to this change to 75 feet, it was.
Well, that particular project site is not under discussion this evening. That area is
No,
not.
I'm just trying to
being rezoned
understand
yet.
how it achieved that height.
Well, again, that was developed
Redevelopment.
back in the
Redevelop-
60s, well before any of this, any of our current codes were in effect. So I'm not sure exactly how that happened.
Okay.
And no documentation to show anything.
I mean, we might have some, but we
Okay,
might
so-
talk about it.
buildings
Ask our housing
buildings
person.
built to standards, and then the standards change. The buildings still exist. They're just called legal non-conforming, meaning they don't conform with the zoning map. So
Grandfathered in.
yeah, grandfathered in is another way of saying it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's healthy to dream. And I have a dream, and the dream is, what if the Navy came to us one day and said, we're tired of this golf course. It really just costing us way too much money a month. And they said, we either want to sell or give you 300 feet on Channel Islands and relieve ourselves from that. Would the zone just cross over there and make it, or would you have to go through a process to zone it?
That would be up to all of us to come up with that, what we want to zone it.
And then upzoning, in this case, talking about the property on the corner of Channel Islands and Ventura Road, if I can envision what this may look like, I just drove through the Wagon Wheel development, and I noticed the bottom floors are like 12 feet, and there's going to be a lot of commercial stuff in there, and then the apartments are on top. Is that what we're talking about or envisioning?
Ultimately, that could very well be, yes.
Because it doesn't seem like we're going to reach our RENA numbers under the current situation.
Well, under today, no, but that's why we're having this discussion this evening.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're trying to set in place new standards to allow us to get to that, achieving that RENA goal.
Okay.
And so by doing so, by allowing, like you just said, having that mixed-use development like they have at Wagon Wheel now, where it's redeveloped, where you have the commercial with the residential on top, that'll get us there.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I can note, I was going to say similar that with the R4 zoning standards, it is sort of what we're talking about, is that in the past, these were residential zones, and now we're saying for these high-density residential zones, they can also have commercial uses. And so it is similar to that Wagon Wheel project. I think if I was going to say this at the end, but if I can just make a comment quickly, because we have met with the state and the HCD and we got their feedback. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, because I do think all of this and the Wagon Wheel project, I think, was a result too of it is the state's goal to really make sure that in the past, for lack of a better word, cities would play games with the affordable housing process, or they would decline projects because the objective standards Tony mentioned, if you had subjective standards that no one knew and that you didn't tell people, you could decline projects, with really not a good basis to do so. So a lot of these are now trying to respond to the state, which is saying, essentially all cities have to pull their fair share for housing from now on. And they have a goal across the state to build, I think it's hundreds of thousands of units across the state. No city is special. Nobody gets to opt out of it. There is one city everybody knows that is fighting it as hard as they can and spending a lot of money to do it, but Huntington Beach is sort of the notorious one.
Getting sued by the state.
But everybody else, is sort of coming to grips with the reality that the state is holding everybody to these standards. You can't deny it anymore because it impacts your view or because it because it doesn't look the way you want it to look. And so I think that these, there's a lot of good, like Tony said, in this, for property owners, it's good. Now they have more flexibility to build what they want to build, and they can add uses that they couldn't have on their properties before. For us, obviously, the concern is not having local control. We can't say this isn't a good fit for our city anymore. It's just, now it's, does it meet the state standard or not? And so there's good and there's bad. I think the point I wanted to get to is we met with HCD. I think one of the things we wanted to do meeting with HCD is I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page and we were clear, we had clarity. Even if we didn't necessarily agree on everything, we were clear on it. And I think we talked with them, and one of the main questions we got to at the end that we were sort of surprised by the answer, but I think it sort of shows the direction we're going, is we thought there was a misunderstanding because we require affordable housing covenants for all the projects that get all the affordable housing benefits. We thought for sure that there was a misunderstanding because the state had said that they did not agree with affordable housing covenants and that they were illegal. So we got in the room and we met with HCD and we said, are we 100% clear on this? And the state said, yes, the state HCD opinion is that affordable housing covenants are illegal moving forward. So that's like it's a moving target, not to be negative, but each round of RENA, the state has to get more and more aggressive to try to force people to build the units that they're trying to get. And so one of the things they said is that people weren't building because they couldn't justify the cost because there's affordable housing covenants that will limit how much rent they can charge. And so for us, we were like, well, that's the point of affordable housing. But the state said, no, we want the units built. So so I think maybe I jumped ahead to that, and Tony will talk about that.
We're there, basically, in that part of the presentation.
But it's just, for me, I'm just speaking to sort of that shift in where the state essentially has just said at this point is everybody needs to get on board with building these units and stop finding excuses to not build units. And so our ordinances and our goals now are to try to make that happen for us as a city.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. So I'm going all the way back to the beginning. You mentioned in the last cycle, our number was 2. And now our number is 125. And what is the cycle limit? I mean, how long is a cycle?
It's 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
And so in our last cycle, we had 2. Did we satisfy the 2?
No, we did not. We did not.
I was assuming, I was just guessing we would.
We did not get an extremely low unit built.
Okay.
And that's probably one of the reasons why they bumped it up a little bit.
Okay. And so each cycle, we will get, if things go according to history, every year we get a number.
Every 8 years.
Every 8, that's what I meant. Every cycle we'll get a new number.
Correct.
So at some point, we're going to be back. I don't know how many we can build, right?
Right.
At some point, we'll be back to we can't build anymore.
We're going to have a marina.
So,
Well, and the
How do we-
standards will probably get higher
Right.
and denser and
Right.
taking away setbacks. And that's, I mean, we're kind of in the middle of that
Right.
right now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that out loud and kind of have that answer out loud.
Yeah.
Right, and I think one of the things right now that the league and whatnot are starting to look at and ask cities for and whatnot is some assistance and some feedback with regard to the process, the overall RENA process, and to see if that can be worked out a little bit better because every year or every cycle, basically, it seems to be a little bit more onerous, and there are a lot more arguments amongst the regions as well.
This is a constant discussion of SCAG.
I guess the thought, your response took me to another thought is, so we are very in tune, I believe, with our resident desires, right? And so at some point, we may have to take a harder stance. That's all I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's true.
One more
Yes.
question.
You done?
Regarding whether it was the covenants, isn't that the issue that Mr. Scrivener raised several months ago, right? And so for the audience, this is what a lack of local control looks like. And this is what we've been hearing up and down the state, is that the state has taken away local control for good reason, but the devil is in the details. And for our city, we're so strapped for land. When you look at Los Angeles versus New York, Los Angeles was spread out, New York went up. So it kind of feels like we're going to be forced to go up.
Yeah, I think that's the thought in California. California, we built large properties, low density, and the future is going to be trying, and the state laws trying to sort of expedite, building more dense, building more compact, building up instead of spreading out. And like I said, there are positives to that for me and for the council. For us, at the end of the day, we all believe that we know our community better than somebody in Sacramento knows our city. So we would like to have that local control and the ability to say this is not right for the city. But I think the problem in the past has been too many cities use that to get out of doing their fair share. And so now the state's reacting to that. So we're trying to find the balance. We're trying to adopt the state standards where we have to and maintain local control where we can.
So the days of council rooms being filled with beachfront property owners upset because we're contemplating building in front of their view is going to be eventually over, where we're going to have no choice to build, unfortunately, to block their view because it's the only place we have to put property.
Yeah, you have to call your state representatives if you don't agree with that.
Okay, so moving on, James basically started the segue here, our ADU ordinance. And as everybody is aware, we've presented several versions of the ADU ordinance to council for approval, the latest being just this past May. The ADU ordinance is the only ordinance out of all of these laws that we've been discussing that is required to be approved by the state, by HCD. So once again, we sent our ordinance to HCD. When we brought the ordinance to you back in May, we were under the impression, based on HCD's past communications, as James had mentioned, that they had basically two issues with the ordinance. So we made those adjustments, and that the third issue was that they misinterpreted it. They thought that our covenant requirement would basically prevent a homeowner from getting a building permit versus getting a building final. They basically only want the units started. They really don't care if they are ever finished. And we let them know, no, the text says it's just prior to final, but it doesn't hold up permitting, and so we didn't make any changes in that case. Well, we received a letter dated September 25th of 2024 with a new litany of corrections, and most of those were pretty pedantic. They pretty much focused on the fact that we were not quoting a state law at this point. But the whole point of having an ADU ordinance is that you don't necessarily quote state law, otherwise you just refer to state law. The idea with an ADU ordinance is to try to keep as much local land use authority as possible as you can, and again, as we've just all mentioned, it's getting stripped away further and further. They also continued to take issue with the covenant requirement. However, once again, they did not tell us specifically what the issue was and cite what the state statute was. In addition to that, for instance, when I went to the planning conference just a couple days after we received that letter, when I'm finding out about all these other state laws, since May, there have been two more changes to the ADU statutes that have been made. They're basically changing every year. For a city our size, that's a lot to keep track of. For instance, in addition to all of these requirements, those two laws, for instance, If you look them up, they're not together. They're two separate statutes altogether, and it's up to planners to put them together and present them to you as one whole, for instance, in addition to everything else. And then, as I mentioned, this then has to go to the state for approval. So every time the statutes change, we have to go to you to get approved. It goes to HCD, but because we're a coastal city, it then has to go to the Coastal Commission. Now, it hasn't gone to coastal yet because we still have not gotten approval from HCD to begin with. But assuming we ever did, then we would go through this whole annual cycle, which would be quite a burden. So at this point, with all of that, and the fact that it looks like HCD is just not going to back off, after a lot of discussions amongst the city attorneys, city manager, staff, we have decided that it's probably best that we just, especially with HCD now demanding that we quote state law anyway, that we request that the council just repeal the ADU ordinance altogether. That would take away the affordable covenants, and we will just refer to state law. Staff will, and we will ask the applicants to do so as well. And that way, anytime state law changes, we at least won't have to come back and go through this whole process again. Now, what that means to our arena, it's good and bad. Currently, we've been putting our ADUs in the low-income category. So they'll come out of that category, and they will be a part of our above moderate, or they'll be put in our above moderate category, so to speak. But as you'll recall, that's actually the one that we need to fill the most anyway. We have 65 required in the above moderate category, 16 in the low income. We do currently have the 5 Habitat units that would stay in the low income category, so we only need to get 11 more. Habitat is actually interested in purchasing our properties along Pleasant Valley. It looks like it would be more than 11 units that they'd be constructing there, so that alone would allow us to meet our arena with regard to that. So, so hopefully that will all come to fruition, and then it shouldn't be a problem. And then our ADUs would just be counted as above moderate. The only drawback, of course, again, is that we are no longer ensuring affordable units are being provided here in the city. And being a beach community, that is something to take into consideration. But again, we think at this point it's a losing proposition with HCD. So it's just time to kind of cut our losses and repeal the ordinance. So that's what we are requesting be done. And then the last component of this evening's request are the rezonings. As I've mentioned already, we talked about the 3 areas proposed to be rezoned from general commercial or C1 to mixed use, so I won't go through all that again. But there is one other area to discuss here, and that would be a really true upzoning from limited multifamily to true multifamily, basically from R2 to R3. And that is for one area, just, I'll bring it over here, just fast forward here. It's the little area here along Eastport Wainimi Road, just to the east of the extension of Surfside Drive. We have several older commercial area uses there, or properties, some vacant. We have the Seaside Motel. There's a liquor store there. And then there's a 1-story older apartment complex behind there. Currently, the R2 standards allow 15 units per acre. The rezoning would be basically, again, allowing the upzoning to 25 units per acre. It would allow from a height from 2 stories to 3 stories. Setbacks would be increased from 15 feet to 20 feet in the rear, but that's because of the additional height. But at this point, again, this is because this would allow additional units to be constructed to meet our general plan and housing element requirements. So staff, even though all of this was vetted out back in 2021, staff did send letters specifically about these to the 30 affected property owners of all 4 of these areas. We also included for the 24 property owners that were going to be rezoned from C1 to R4, we included the draft R4 standards. We are not changing the standards for the R2 or R3 zones, so we didn't have to mail anything there. And we explained the reason for the rezonings and the benefits for the property owners. We've heard back from several of them. So far, they've been in favor. We've heard back from a property owner in our downtown area, so to speak, who's in favor. He had some questions, and so we clarified that. He's in favor of the rezoning. Property owner of the little church right across the street from the police station sent us an email this afternoon saying that she was in favor. You received a letter here from the Hueneme Bay Center as well, stating that they were in favor as well. So, and that's what we've heard from so far up through this evening with regard to this item. And so with regard to CEQA, we, as you may recall, an EIR or Environmental Impact Report was prepared for the general plan. And so for this project, an addendum to that EIR was prepared. And that was done in accordance with the CEQA guidelines, and it's basically to analyze the proposed modifications. And what the modifications are basically are very minor, and that would be looking at the minor increase or potential minor increase from going from 25 units to 30 units per acre if somebody wanted to take advantage of those incentives in the R4 zone and the additional potential impacts, and they were determined not to be significant. So this addendum was prepared for that. The city is the lead agency on both the EIR and this addendum. And then finally, while none of these amendments will have a direct impact on the general fund, due to the rezonings, they could result in potential additional development, which potentially could raise property values and thus increasing property tax revenues for the city. And so here we are at the recommendation. Would you like to read that? Would you like me to
I'll read it.
paraphrase?
Before we do, I think we have
Yes.
some questions.
Yes.
Yeah, just really quick. Can you just tell me how many ADUs? Oh, okay. Let me do this. How many ADUs do we have in the works right now?
You know, I just had that on the thing. I believe that we have 20. Well, we have a lot coming through as far as the plan check process.
Right.
We've actually permitted 7 so far this year, but like I said, I imagine we'll have quite a few more by the end of the year. And then over the last couple of years, we've reported 24 so far with our general plan reports to the state.
And if it's repealed, then do the other ones that you have that haven't been permitted yet, do those go through or do they not go through?
They go through, they just go through in the above moderate category instead of the low income category, but they still get counted.
Okay, and when you say that that requests would have to be in alignment with the state's requirement, does that mean it will go through the state and not the city?
No, I just mean that right now, we have our ordinance basically, so we've got a few nuances, a few minor nuances at this point, very minor, including that covenant. That's a requirement, but if we repealed our ordinance, then we would just basically be required to abide by the letter of the state law, so to speak. But we would still have complete jurisdiction over the plan review permitting process and whatnot.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Yes.
think I remember that the Surfside Hotel Motel, but it's not the Holiday Inn, was going to provide 55 low-income units.
The Surfside Motel, they are at 41 units
41
total.
units?
Only 9 of those would be low income, though.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you, Director Stewart. I know that's painful, but a necessary part of city government. I'm going to open the public hearing and take public comment. The public hearing is now open for public input at 7:45 p.m. Are there any public comments regarding this item?
Yes, we have one public comment.
Thank you.
Mr. David Scrivener.
First thing I'd like to say is thank Tony and staff for going through it looks like something I couldn't read for 2 minutes without going to sleep and remembering what the other pages said. I mean, this is next to impossible. I strongly urge you to void the current ADU policy. It's illegal, and it's created some problems that may not go away so quickly. Okay. If you look at page 3 of the presentation on the zoning stuff, it basically says if you have ever rented basically to a low-income person, okay, you are then obligated to rent to low-income people if you want to improve your property. This is going to make landlords not rent to people who have low income. This makes absolutely no sense. So it basically, if I had a piece of property and I had a great tenant who was paying their rent, and then suddenly they had ran into hard times and needed to go on to some sort of, it sounds like even if they just had low income, if I continue to rent to them, I'm out of luck. I'm required then to do low income in the future. Now, please tell me I'm wrong. I think this is a state situation, but that's what it says. So I'm a landlord. I've been renting houses for 35 years, okay? I have a lot of experience with this. I've had good tenants. It's gone pretty well. I've had 2 bad ones. It cost me tens of thousands of dollars to get rid of them. They both strung out on crystal meth, and one right behind the police station over here. But the vast majority of people pay their rent. They're good people. I keep their rents, you know, usually less than market rates. But if any of those people were, it sounds like, falls into low income, okay, I'm not allowed, if I want to redevelop that property, to do what I want. I'm stuck with low income. So as a landlord, or a property owner, what do I do? I would like to be of service to people, but I don't want to lose my ability to develop my property. So this is concerning. Now, this comes at a time where landlords in California are under extreme attack by the state. At this point, you can't get rid of bad tenants. You can't tell somebody who's a felon that they can, you have to rent to them. You can't evict people. If somebody tears your place up, basically you're out of luck. You can't keep dangerous dogs off your properties. There's a lot of, and you're responsible for all this. Oops, I'm out of time. So anyway, things are getting tough, and what I'd like to see is we do something that increases low-income housing and helping people. This isn't going to do it. Thank you.
There are no further speakers.
Thank you. I will be closing the public hearing. Public input has been concluded at 7:48. So we have before us a recommendation to introduce the first reading by title only, waiving further reading of an ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme, California, amending Port Hueneme Municipal Code Article X, Chapter 4, Section 10460, pertaining to mixed-use residential, or R4, zoning standards, amending Chapter 6, Section 10804, and establishing Chapter 6, Section 10805, both pertaining to affordable housing regulations, repealing Chapter 6, Sections 10802, pertaining to accessory dwelling units, standards, and rezoning certain properties from general commercial, or C1, to mixed-use residential R4 or from limited multifamily R2 to multifamily R3. Adopt the addendum to the environmental impact report that was previously prepared for this Port Hueneme General Plan Update Project State Clearinghouse number 2021040164 and take such additional related action that may be desirable. May I have a motion and a second? Come on, people, we got it.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Roll call vote, because public hearing. Councilmember Goma,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McQueen LaShawn.
Yes.
And Mayor Perez.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
May I make a comment? Is it, yeah?
Yes.
So I just want to make the comment that this is coming from the state, right?
Mhm.
And our hands are tied. And if you got a problem with what's happening, that we need to communicate up to our state representative somehow, some way, because we just keep falling into the states mandating this.
And if I could just, I think, I don't want to interrupt the motion because it was a long recommendation and motion,
you.
but can I ask Tony, I don't believe there's any requirement that to respond to the comment, that if you've rented to a low-income tenant, that anything in here would require you that your next tenant be low income. In fact, the elimination of the covenant basically says that's not required anymore. Do you know, is there anything I'm missing?
If we're discussing ADUs, then by repealing the ADU ordinance, then that requirement goes away. And so
That's my understanding.
since we just repealed it, that requirement would go away.
Anything further?
Nope,
Thank
but
you,
it'll be
Director
back
Stewart.
One more time.
Yeah, the requirement goes away, and we confirmed with the state that they view that requirement is illegal. So,
Okay, we will now move on to business items. The first business item is the analysis of options related to potential parking improvements.
thank you. I'll try to keep these two actually brief after that interesting one to start. So, really simply, we've talked a few times recently about some of the efforts we've made that have been focused on traffic efforts, pedestrian safety efforts, and parking-related efforts. We've had a couple of conversations lately where we talked about each, we've made good progress on the traffic and the pedestrian-related efforts, and I think the parking efforts, we had done a few things, but we are hearing from the community, and we're also kind of seeing some issues and seeing some state laws coming up where we know parking is going to be an issue that is probably going to become a bigger issue and something that we want to look at proactively. So this slide shows some of the efforts we've made related to traffic efforts, reinstating our traffic division, motorcycle enforcement, launching pilot programs for the speed humps and rubber medians to prevent donuts, updating speed limits, updating stop sign operating procedures, updating truck route signs and truck routes. And we're going to be bringing a grant proposal for a safety action plan to council at an upcoming meeting. So we've been putting significant effort in there. We've put significant effort into pedestrian safety and making ADA ramp improvements, pedestrian safety crossing improvements, marked crosswalk and other striping improvements, and the Reflect Yourself pedestrian safety campaign we just launched. But the parking efforts are an area we're still looking at. We had done the realignment of our parking enforcement to work with the traffic division to coordinate efforts that could focus on all three of these areas. We've worked with the Navy base to add some parking on San Pedro, which was critically needed, and we've seen from some of our visits that that parking is filling up already pretty much immediately after it was installed. And then we adjusted our street sweeping schedule to try to ease some of the impacts on parking that street sweeping was having. But there's some things coming up. Most sort of time sensitive is that on January 1st, which somehow it sounds far away, but it's somehow, about 6 weeks away at this point, a new state law is going to be implemented called California's daylighting law. And essentially that's going to require the removal of on-street parking within 20 feet of the vehicle approach side of any marked or unmarked crosswalk. And so now where cars can be closer to the crosswalk, I think in some areas it can be within 10 feet. Now there's going to be a bigger area of where the state's requiring no parking. And, just like the last item we talked about, there's positives and negatives. And unfortunately, we have to figure out how to deal with the negatives. But the positives are it's supposed to allow for clearer views for pedestrians, but also drivers. So it's supposed to be a safety effort, but it is going to impact parking. And it is going to be, especially you can picture certain neighborhoods where it's could be every 50 feet, there's another intersection that could be impacted. And so we have that coming, and then tying in with that last conversation with state building laws and accessory dwelling units and those things. A lot of state laws now, some of the standards we talked about where we said that we used to be able to have some standards that would allow us to say no to projects. For example, one of those things was saying you don't have enough parking for this project. And now the state building laws get more, they're finding, are limiting the city's ability to do that because they need the units built. So they're saying, parking's not a good enough excuse to not allow housing, and all these things have good and bad. The good is, that encourages building. The bad is, if you ask anybody who lives in that neighborhood if they would want there to be parking if somebody's building a new project, I'm guessing they would want them to have to put some parking in. So that's another, there's a few areas like that. And so what we thought about doing, lastly, I'll say, and I think we've all gotten, public comment at some of our council meetings recently and through email comments and things, we do hear from people who say, parking is a problem in my neighborhood. But unfortunately, typically the responses are the comment will be, it's a problem in my neighborhood, so can you stop it here and move it over to the neighborhood next to mine? And we've had a lot of those conversations, and we talk to people and say like, well, what would your neighbor say to that? How would they feel about it? And for us, it kind of led us to a discussion where we said, we really think the answer, or the best we have at an answer here, is to do I know the word holistic is overused, but a holistic citywide approach versus just responding, when somebody comes in today and asks for red curb on their street, and then the next week when their neighbors come in and say, now we don't have parking, and having to play that game. So we want to do a parking analysis, and so we brainstormed some ideas as an example so that, we can talk about what kind of things we'd be looking at. And then as we're looking at these, if like other opportunities arise, or if we see this won't work here, but actually this other thing will, then we'd also incorporate that. But as an example, 4 areas that we think are worth looking at right away. One is, we've heard a couple conversations recently about, and we had a public comment a couple months back about someone who wanted to build an ADU, but they had too much of their front yard was already a driveway, and so then that was going to impact their project. So we want to look at those standards and see, one of the questions is cities are always reactive to these things and usually kind of behind the curve. And so we want to look and try to look proactively and see what are other cities doing? Is there anything other cities are doing, or is there anything we can do where maybe we start looking at that differently, where in the past you needed to have more lawn, and now and there's so many factors, but there's a lot of people who say lawns actually aren't good for the environment anymore, and the water conservation and, those types of things. So maybe now the standards should be shifting to allowing for more parking on site, for example. And so we don't know what the answer is to these ideas yet, but we're saying we're recommending that the council authorize us to start spending some time trying to think about these things and come up with some recommendations. So that's one. Second is residential permit parking. I think it's the request we've received. I think more than others. I think we've probably received it in maybe 4 or 5 council meetings, requests from different neighborhoods, and then we also we get that question at all of our like kind of community events and via email. There's some negatives with permit parking, but it's one of those things I think we'd analyze and we'd come back and we'd encourage some public conversations after that to see if people understand what that includes. And, you know, the fact there's just a lot to them. They can be, there could be costs to permits. There could be limits to how many permits each person gets. And maybe the resident who's advocating for it might realize that they actually don't want that limit themselves. So we just want to have those conversations rather than just respond to each request on a case-by-case basis. Third was looking at our existing streets, our existing properties, and looking at the city and looking for opportunities to add parking spaces or capacity, which could be as simple as doing things like changing striping in some areas, or it could be a future capital improvement project that we identify to address parking 4 or 5 years down the road. So there's we want to be able to look at those things and kind of come up with some recommendations about some options there. And then fourth was we actually did this year, and I think it's worked pretty well. It was one neighborhood that it was very dense and had a lot of parking issues, and we installed more stop signs, which allowed for more parking, but then slowed the traffic down to to also make it safer and to help with the traffic. So that could be another type of program that we look at other areas of the city to see where we could recommend that, where that could work. So we wanted to come up with some examples just so that it wouldn't be, so that the council would have an idea of kind of the things we'd be looking at. The idea with this recommendation is today council is not saying that we will move forward with any of these things, but we're going to analyze them, come back and say where these things could work, where they wouldn't work, what the costs would be, and then we can talk and the council can then decide which ones to move forward with. So it's just for that analysis. And so what the council is asking for is essentially the authorization to do that, including, and this is an up to, we don't know that we'd actually spend this, but I think it's the most we would spend, but up to a $30,000 allocation for engineering costs to fully analyze these ideas and others that may arise from them. So we are recommending the council authorize us to move forward with that.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Gama, do you?
Yes. As I was sitting here, I was thinking, okay, so if we go for the low-hanging fruit, as they say, and did parallel parking on the beach, I think it's pretty obvious we'd generate more parking spots, but then we'd probably start generating a safety issue for the surfers who are trying to get in and out of their wetsuits, the back of their cars. So these are the type of things that they're going to look at, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the past there have been some proposals for some different striping patterns and things like that at the beach. So that's something we could come back with.
Am I correct that didn't we one year do parallel parking at the beach for an event? Did we? No?
Not that I know.
No?
No.
Could have been for a car show or something, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
We turned a street into a parking lot. That's the only thing I recall. But
Yeah, we've done that a few times.
Yeah, I think, and then on the ADU in the front yard, you can go and drive around the neighborhoods, and the people with the bigger front yards, I think it's 40% concrete in the front, and they'll have like 6, 7 cars parked in their front yard, and I think that's another one where we have to change it. We need more parking, so I just want to make sure that that they're really going to take a hard look at all the options and realizing that, hey,
Councilmember Hernandez?
I'll wait till there's comments.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. Are there any public comments regarding this item?
Yes, we have a public comment from David Scrivener.
I need to switch my hat from citizen to president of the Homeowners Association, Surfside Village. So we have Miranda Park where we've had lots of long-term parking problems in that northeast portion of the park. I'm sure you're all aware of it. Things are better now than they have been, but we still have people there who are basically living in the park. They're there at 8 in the morning till 9 at night. Some of them are doing drugs, some of them are just hanging out. But pretty much if you don't, what we would like to request is you put a time limit on that area. When we had cones put out there in the past, the police department authorized those, the people disappeared. They didn't go park out where everybody else was parking because they're skulking around. They don't really want to be seen. So what I'm asking for is in Miranda Park, if we could get a 4-hour or 2-hour, I don't really care what the time frame is, that basically says you can't just stay there all day and drink beer and do God knows what. And that's not for the whole park. The rest, the stuff that's open, I see no problem happening at all. It's used by the park, getting a lot of use. It's really positive. And you know, as a resident there, the more people that use the park, the happier I am. So good vibes in the air, and the criminal element disappears. The other area that I think I'd like you to pay attention to is Bolker Park. You've got some parking lots there that are pretty much completely monopolized by the people living in the condominiums and apartments around there. So it's supposed to be dedicated for park use. Frankly, nobody uses the park, okay? And there's time limits on it which don't get enforced. I would like you to either take away all the signs, let people park there, or start enforcing it, if that makes sense. I think we have signs that say, you know, for park use only. I don't know how you figure out who's at the park or not, but basically this is a problem because there's no place to park. A lot of the condominiums the garages are full, people are sleeping in them, people have to park someplace. So I'm not saying don't let them park there, and I don't see any problems there, by the way. It's just they're parking, and we've got signs saying don't do it, and it's not enforced. So I'd like to encourage you to either enforce it or to get rid of the signs. So thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. So the recommendation is to receive the update on potential parking improvement options, provide feedback, and authorize staff to perform an analysis of potential options for future consideration, including a $30,000 allocation for engineering costs as needed. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second. Is there any further discussion on this item?
I just wanted to make a comment. So tonight when I go home, I won't be able to park in my garage because I have one vehicle in there already, and the rest of the garage is like a workshop. I very rarely find parking on the street at this time of night, and so I end up finding parking like 2 blocks away from my home, and don't always feel so safe and secure walking from my car to my home. I think, you know, our HOAs do what they can to encourage people to make space in their garages for both cars, but not everybody does that. And, you know, I'm guilty of being one of them, so I take a parking space on the street when I can manage that. But when I do park on the street, I often find cars parked where they're taking up 2 spaces, and I'm like, you know, if you just moved a little further forward, I could park my car there. And I don't know if there's a solution to that. Maybe, you know, striping the curb so cars can fit in a systematic way. But hopefully this analysis will look at those kinds of situations, and then also what the HOAs can do to encourage people to actually use their garages for parking, so that takes more cars off the street. Thank you.
Any further comments?
If I could just note, with that and the comment, the public comment as well, is I think striping and signage are 2 areas where there might be hopefully some low-hanging fruit and kind of low-cost improvements we can make. So.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. I know that one of the HOAs approved for a gate, and they haven't installed it yet. It was approved a couple of years ago. I'm not going to mention any names, but again, it's a great enhancement for that community. However, the reality is there's people parking in their neighborhood because there's a lack of parking across the street. And so as parking is less and less available, it just gets to be a bigger and bigger problem. And as for Miranda Park, I like David Scrivener. Pickleball has brought so many good people to Miranda Park. Thanks, Rich Rollins. And it's pretty amazing because, like Mr. Scrivener said, when you have wholesome uses of the park, it has great benefits. But that little corner is a problem, and so anything we could do to help.
Madam Clerk, can we please take the vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is the update on the Port Hueneme Expanded Polystyrene, or EPS, and single-serve plastics ordinance. Will staff please present the report?
Thank you. Yes, and we just have one slide on this, and we just wanted to update everybody on the efforts related to the EPS ordinance implementation, or commonly known as the styrofoam prohibition. And so we have on the right of this slide is the kind of the marketing materials that we had sent out and posted, reminding people that EPS was banned, that alternative biodegradable materials are allowed, but also that reusable dishes and things like that are best typically. So we had started sharing that information out at the start of, right before the start of the year. And we spent several months kind of trying to do regular outreach. And phase one was sort of six months, give or take, doing the public education and outreach portion of the implementation. In phase two, what we had identified as phase two would be that once we got any notification, any complaints about businesses that were violating this prohibition, that we would issue a 30-day notice to the business, educating them directly, and then requiring them to schedule an inspection with us where we could confirm that they were transitioning over to the compliant materials. And so we had not received any complaints. Actually, I can say as of this moment, we have not received any complaints. But we became aware of a couple of restaurants that were using the materials. And so we have issued 30-day notices to those restaurants. And we have we're planning to have our follow-up inspections with those restaurants in December. Depending on how that goes, if they haven't converted, we would move to phase three, which would be performing the follow-up inspection. And if they have not complied, we would issue citations at that time to those businesses. So the hope would be that we don't have to do that, but that is the plan if needed. In the meantime, we've talked about doing another round of public education, public outreach. And I think this time maybe one of the lessons learned is more prominently including the code compliance information in those materials, so that people know immediately who to call and how to report it. So that could potentially have been an issue, although typically people do figure out how to get a hold of us. But we hadn't received any complaints in the last 11 months that we've been going through this process. So again, at this point, we have notices issued to a few businesses, and we'll be doing the follow-up inspections in December. And with that, I think this was intended to be a status update, and so we recommend that council receive it and provide any desired direction.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions? Not seeing any. Are there any public comments regarding this item?
No public comments.
Thank you. The recommendation is to receive an update on the city's expanded polystyrene ordinance and deemed necessary provide direction to staff. May I have a motion and a second to receive?
Move to approve the recommendations by staff. I mean,
A second, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, and I would just like to point out that it's 8:14.
You know, when you go to a restaurant and they give you the new containers, if you put a piece of foil at the bottom of it, they'll last a lot longer. But if you don't,
It soaks through.
it soaks through. So yeah, and I notice that my favorite restaurant does a really good job of accommodating that. So.
Thank you. We'll move on to city manager comments and reports.
Thank you. We have a few today. We've had a few things we wanted to provide updates on. So first, we just wanted to thank everybody who attended and represented our city and appreciated our veterans at the 2024 Veterans Day ceremony. We had a great event, and the video Facebook post, Facebook stream that we were able to record the whole ceremony is available to watch. There's a QR code here. You can just go to the City of Port Hueneme Facebook page and check that out. Particularly, I think it was great. We got to hear from our keynote speaker was Captain Daniel S. Bensi, and our special honoree was Orvine Carpenter, our longest-serving council member, and former postmaster and World War II and Korean veteran, who is going to be celebrating his 100th birthday, I believe, next month. So it was a good event and probably hard to top for next year. So we got to start thinking ahead. So, so we had that last week, and we have some events coming up we wanted to let people know about and get on people's calendars. First, our holiday tree lighting celebration is on Tuesday, December 3rd, 5:30 to 7:30. Last year, that one was very well attended. So plan to get there maybe a little bit early, and the line for Santa and everything got pretty lengthy last year. So that will kind of kick off our winter season. And then following the week after that will be the senior holiday luncheon and at the Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center. We mentioned this earlier, and the next couple slides are, like I said, it was great timing because with the storm coming up and with us completing some of the storm efforts, it gives us a chance to talk about some of those efforts we put in place. First and foremost, this week we had our graduation of 23 community members from the Community Emergency Response Team program, otherwise known as the CERT program. And so congratulations to these graduates for who took the time to master disaster response skills and now can help serve a support role during the next emergency situation. So. And as we saw a couple weeks back with the mountain fire, these emergencies can happen at any time and when you least expect it, and it's just part of always being prepared for it. So that was a great showing. 23 people graduating is a pretty good sized class especially for being our first one back. So that was great. And then related to disaster preparation and specifically storm preparation, both the city and our partners at the county have been proactively preparing for storms. We have some information here. It shows our city team and our public works director and deputy director on site, and myself with the County Public Works Director and a representative from Supervisor Lopez's office, where we actually went out and we walked areas of the channel and got our eyes on it. And then following that, the county, and these are projects that take some time. I think that meeting was about a month ago, but the county actually scheduled a cleanup of the channel that took place this morning at 10 a.m. And our police team provides support to the county in those efforts. Our police team actually went out and we cleared, I want to say it was a 30 foot dumpster, a large dumpster, not just not like a home use dumpster, but the big 30-foot long ones. Yeah, what? Yeah, 40 foot. We filled one of those up with the stuff, the debris that we found in the channel today. So that was a big effort, and we had kind of pushed and scheduled that, and that was before we all found out this morning that there may actually be a storm coming. So, we had said at the time that, hey, it's almost December, a storm may come, and it turned out to be very good timing. So we went out there and did that in partnership with the county. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the council today approved that additional work on Bubbling Springs. We always, it's a sort of a challenge to explain to people why it takes so long to do the Bubbling Springs, but there's the fish and wildlife requirements and things where we can only work so many days a year. And so this year we are making sure, this is actually year 3 of us working on all those days that we can work to really try to clean up the creek. And we're moving forward, and that item today was to actually add some, the ability to do even more work this year. So you may see that work ongoing. It's been ongoing in that area shown on the map, that blue area. It's a little hard to see, but we'll post. We're going to do a post on this in the next couple of days, and we'll include some of this information as well, and the picture's a little larger. But we're just continuing to try to get prepared for storms and get ahead of any winter weather that's coming. So. At the same time, Public Works is making good progress on a lot of the different capital improvement projects and pavement projects that we have across the city. You can see that the westbound Channel Islands resurfacing project is now complete, with the new restriping was the last piece, and that's now done. We also, and I want to give credit, Public Works has been looking ahead and getting creative, and when the crews on site to do one project, we're trying to make sure we do other projects that are close by to keep the costs low. And so we've also had slurry sill projects at Lot C at the beach and the recreation corridor. Lot C, for now, people may notice it's not striped yet, and that's because we're taking the opportunity while we're doing this and we're doing that ADA plan we had talked about. We're gonna try to connect the two and see what we can stripe better to be more ADA compliant, rather than stripe it and then have to immediately update it. So we're working on that, and then people have probably noticed the beach walkways were under construction. The first area has been almost completely complete. There's one little area that we're gonna work on, mostly the aesthetic of it, but it's one side of the beach walkway is done, and we've now moved over to the second side. So we're moving through that project. And then the last note, it's actually related to one of the future council requests at the last meeting was a request for us to bring back the review of the Ventura Road and Wainimi Road traffic issue related to a protected left turn. And so we dug into that, and we found that when it was requested by council initially, we did some initial research, but it basically concluded that more data was needed to move forward with the project. So we've now authorized our staff to move forward with gathering that additional data. And once they gather that, then we'll bring the findings back to council with costs and everything else, and then we'll come back with a recommendation of how to proceed. So that'll be coming back to council in coming months. And after all that, so looking ahead at the December 2nd agenda, just for anybody who's wondering, because it changes sometimes, but all the election-related dates this year, we're expecting to have all of those items on the December 16th agenda, because the county has to certify the election results, and that takes some time. People probably noticed they're still counting. I think it's about 20,000 ballots left that they're still counting. 15,000, yeah. So
It goes up a little every time.
yeah. So that's not planned yet for the December 2nd agenda. It'll be the December 16th most likely. And so the December 2nd agenda, which would be the last with everybody sitting up here right now, we plan to bring a Safe Streets grant that we mentioned earlier on consent. We are going to bring part 3 of these fun community and economic development ones, and so that'll be another long recommendation to read. And then we have a few items we're planning to bring forward as business items. One, we're just calling it the Grants Pass update, and just without getting into it, the Grants Pass court decision passed this year, and there's a lot of questions or confusion about what that means for each city and how the unhoused issues can be approached. So we just want to do kind of a status update and talk about how we're working with other cities in the county and where we're at in that process. There's also, Surfriders have approached the city about a dune restoration project that we want to get feedback from the council on. And then I think everybody's aware that Port Hueneme Little League in the past had an exclusive use agreement at Bubbling Springs baseball fields. But with the park going through this $15 million grant and renovation, coming back from it, we know that other people are going to want to use the field, ask to use the field. And so we've talked with the Little League about a proposal to drop some of the requirements that they've had in the past in exchange for downgrading from an exclusive use to a priority use that would allow others to use the field. So I think we have an agreement that is proposed that the city council will receive an update on and determine whether to move forward with. So December 2nd meeting is we'll have a lot on it, and it's kind of to get it'll be the last meeting, what we expect to be the last meeting before the election and the change resulting from the election. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for City Manager Vega? Anything? I would like to make some comments on some items that you mentioned. The CERT program, I was one of those graduates, and I just want to thank County Fire, Steve Lazenby, and firefighter Nick Hyatt for a great program and for preparing and equipping us with all the information we need to now be, and one of my CERT compadres is in the audience. And I want to thank Joan for being such a great victim.
Moulage victim.
You looked beautiful with a head wound.
And I had such a great time. I do want to say, and also thank you, Mark, the building inspector, for inviting me. And the two words that I keep thinking of when I think about the CERT training and the experience I went through on Saturday being a victim, and I had a great time falling into rescuers' arms. I mean, how great is that? I keep thinking of the words inspiring and reassuring, because these are the people who are going to be taking care of us and organizing us when a disaster happens. And it will happen. We just don't know when. And I was so impressed with how these trainees, they were so serious about what they were doing and how they were getting us out of buildings and tending to our wounds and triaging all of us. It was just a really impressive day, and I hope to be able to do it again. It was a lot of fun.
No, they did a very good job of making sure we were ready. Also want to thank City Manager Vega, Sergeant Perez, officer for pushing on the county. And it literally was a push to get them to come down and get the clearing of those canals. So I'm really happy they did so. They did not let up, and they were on them and making sure it was done. They knew how important it was to residents to make sure that we could say we did our part in making sure the channels were clear. So they did a great job of that. Okay, moving on to council member reports and comments. I'll start with Councilmember Martinez, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Perez. I just want to say that after the election, I've had a lot of concerned residents, friends, and family asking me what I'm going to do with my life now that I'm not going to be on council. I'm still a teacher, just for the record. And I'm still going to be part of Sister City and Reach. So some of my comments are that the Sister City is hosting an art gallery this Wednesday at the Ocean View Pavilion. It's Wednesday, November 20th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. It's an artist from Puerto Vallarta. I've actually met him on one of my first visits, and so I really do love his art. It's very, very colorful. So I recommend that if you want to check out the art. I don't think he doesn't have anything for sale, but just to see his art, I think it's going to be inspirational. And I also want to mention that Reach had a really successful pickleball tournament. Since Reach is now more of a working board, I want to say that I'm one of the workers, and I created the website, so I recommend you check it out. And if there's any advice or feedback you can give me, I'm more than happy to take it. We have some photos from the last pickleball tournament on the website, and it shows the winners, and I think it's pretty cool. It's only going to get better. And yeah, we're looking forward to hosting 2 more tournaments sometime next year. So we'll be coming back to council and asking for permission. We're thinking about basketball, and if you have any other ideas for sports, we're more than happy to listen to your suggestions. And then for Sister City, we're also looking and doing a fundraiser sometime in February, and we've been working with some of the staff to see if we can have some availability too at the community center. But it's just talks, but we're looking forward to doing fundraising for scholarships via Sister City, and then Reach is more like fundraising for maybe some art. That's what we're saying, the tournaments for money for art so that we can paint the electrical boxes, and also maybe fixing up anything that the city might need related to sports. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We were supposed to have a Beacon meeting last Friday, but it was canceled to lack of a quorum, so I don't have anything to report out on that. This Thursday, we're having a long overdue Ventura County Animal Services meeting, which I'm really excited to attend. We have a new director, and the shelter is at max capacity, so if anybody out there that wants to adopt, that would be great. But the people down there, they do such a wonderful job. So if you ever get a chance and you want to get a smile on your face, go visit the Ventura County Animal Services down there at the Camarillo Airport. Really excited. Tonight I was excited to again hear about Chumash and stewardship and environmental and taking care of the environment. And I get a lot of joy out of Hueneme Beach cleanup, and so I want to encourage anybody and everybody to come on down, join us every Saturday. I think we're at 9.5 years now, and I've been trying to negotiate with student groups for community service hours down there in preparation for the rain, because it's pretty clean out there right now, but we know when the rain comes, and we're going to have hopefully not a monumental effort because of the efforts that are happening now, whereas in the past they wouldn't happen, and so all that debris would make it down to the beach. So in line with that thinking, now's the time to start preparing your yards and your areas to drain and not be inundated with trash. And of course, we would love to have more volunteers after the rains, because we do know that that's a time when it gets a little dicey out there. But Hueneme Beach is really clean. People keep saying how clean it is. And on the styrofoam, we really are seeing less styrofoam out there. So that's a good thing. At the risk of sounding negative, I just want to mention, because I see we have our port representative here, we've had 2 instances of noxious emission evenings. And generally speaking, the wind keeps it going the other way. But when it comes down the path of my street, it's really, really noxious. And I was visiting a friend at Anacapa View the other night, and it was stifling. So it's a concern because I know that we have residents that have breathing disorders and this like that. But maybe we could come up with like an app warning system, because it's entirely due to the wind. And so I just wanted to mention that. But it really was, I dragged our city manager out of his office to say, look, do you smell anything here? No. And then we went over to my street, and, you know, the thing about fumes and odors is you can't take a picture of it. You know, you just have to say your word. So just want to mention that, and hope we could collaborate, work together, and look for ways to maybe have a warning system or something.
Councilmember
Thank you,
Hernandez.
Mayor. Just to follow up on Councilman Gama's comments regarding air quality, I do subscribe to the AQMD website and app, and they deliver an air quality report every day, so that's an option you might want to consider. And I know that the air quality was particularly bad in the last week due to the fires, and it seemed like it would get worse at night. Unfortunately, I was out of town and my windows got left open, and so when I came home, the smoke was just all in the upstairs of my home, and it was really hard to get rid of it. But anyway, my meetings were both canceled due to the fire. Speaking of the fire, so I do have some comments I wanted to share regarding the city manager's report. One was the street maintenance report in the Channel Islands Boulevard resurfacing. I want to thank Public Works staff and street maintenance folks for the work on Channel Islands Boulevard. It is beautiful, and it feels so nice to drive down Channel Islands Boulevard on that side where the repaving has been done. What it does to the neighborhood is just incredibly different, and it feels different. It looks different. And that's the kind of quality of life I think we all are looking for our residents. And so thank you for that work. And I think it was a really great improvement for our community. The trash cans, we finally at my HOA received our organic waste trash cans. And I noticed on nextdoor.com there were some complaints about, where am I going to put this trash can? And I don't have any room for it in my garage. And then I noticed, and I didn't have a problem with it because it's small, and I can find room for it. And then I noticed too that they replaced the larger trash cans, the gray and the blue one, with smaller ones. So I have 3 small ones, it's ideal. So I wanted to thank Sanitation Services for that, and thinking about the space limitations that we sometimes have in our garage. So thank you for that. I did attend the Boys and Girls Club for Oxnard Port Hueneme Gala that was Saturday night. It was well attended, emceed by President Selena Zacharias from the port. She does an amazing job as usual. Well attended event, raised a lot of money for our youth. I also attended the Navy League luncheon on Thursday. And that was a great event. They celebrated the Marines' over 249 years of service. Well-attended event as well. And then today I went down to the local assistance center and took the volunteers there some cookies, and kind of walked around and talked to the various volunteer organizations who were there assisting people who are trying to recover from the fire. And one of the interesting things I learned is that there's some families from the fire who lost homes in Camarillo and are relocating here in Port Hueneme in short-term rentals. So when we start to talk about short-term rentals and how some people might not like them or appreciate them, they are serving a purpose for people who are looking for short-term rentals while their homes, they go through the insurance process and the process of rebuilding, which is not too short-term. Also, I volunteered on Friday with Food Share on 5th Street. They have a food pantry now on Friday afternoons, and really enjoyed it and hope to make it a regular volunteer activity in the coming weeks. And let's see. On the behalf of the Veterans VFW 3935, they are conducting a toy giveaway and collecting toys now. They're working along with Premier America, and you can drop off your toys at the VFW or Premier America during business hours. The VFW is open from 11 a.m. to 10, and they'll be collecting toys through 12:15 for giveaways later on, closer to Christmas. And then I also wanted to congratulate the CERT students, the graduates who went through that CERT program. That is quite a commitment of 6 weeks plus the training exercise, and it does elevate our level of readiness here in the community, provided we keep them organized and we keep them active. And I hope that we can swear them in as disaster service workers so that we can use them during an emergency. Otherwise, they're left to their own devices and they do their own thing in their own community, which is fine too. But if the city intends to use them, I think maybe having a ceremony here and swearing them in would be a really nice way to. Yeah. Well, DSW process sometimes gets complicated, so I just wanted to bring that up. That if we're going to do it, I think we should. I'm totally supportive of that. Let's see, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. I too attended the Boys and Girls Club annual fundraiser. Really a nice event. It was my second year, so I really appreciated being able to be there with children.
And Mayor Pro Tem, is your mic on?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I was able to attend the Navy League luncheon, and I was able to present the Navy Sailor of the Year. What so happened that he's the Sailor of the Year for local naval base Ventura County. He's also the Navy Sailor of the Year for the next level, and also for the next level, so for the, I think it's for the Navy overall. So it was really nice. It was an honor for me to present to him, so it was really nice. I attended after our Port Hueneme Veterans Day celebration. I attended the Oxnard Veterans Day as well. It was pretty nice. They had an not unapproved, but unsolicited flyover. So there was a flyover right at the end, but they hadn't even asked for it for somewhere else, but it just happened to be a flyover for the event. It was really nice. And I did just want to share, we talked about our ordinance for the I would just say styrofoam, and then Councilwoman Laura talked about her getting her new bin, yeah. So late last month, I was able to go as a part of the Ventura Regional Sanitation District. We went on a tour to the Tolan landfill. I have a renewed sense of making sure I'm recycling properly, that I'm taking the things that need to go, mattresses and carpet that need to go where they need to go. It was amazing to see all of the trash. Well, the size of the landfill is just incredible. But to see a lot of the items, plastics, like I said, mattresses, carpet, things that have been in the landfill for many, many years, still in their original form. So just kind of, reminded me the importance of making sure that you're using the recycling bins and the new bins that we just received, and putting the right things in the right bins. And so that was eye-opening for me, so I was glad that I was able to do that. And I have attended, a couple of my meetings were canceled this month, but I still have a few that I've attended. So, yeah, that's what I've done this month.
Councilor Gama, do you want to add your?
Yes, some friends of mine are doing a Feeds the Homeless event this November 23rd at 11 a.m. at Plaza Park in Oxnard. They'll have available food, use clothing, sleeping bags that they would like to give to anybody that's homeless in our community. So November 23rd, 11 a.m. at Plaza Park.
Thank you. So my committee meetings were also pretty much canceled this month. After the city's Veterans celebration, I went over to Plaza Park as I'm the Salvation Army, on the Salvation Army Advisory Board. So we fed the veterans, there are about 300 veterans right there at Plaza Park. And then leftover food, my husband and I went with Captain Torres, the two Captain Torreses, and went around the city with the remainder of the food and just handed them out to the homeless people that we could find on the streets. And that will be occurring regularly. We plan on partnering with the Salvation Army in this community because they don't just stay in Ventura. They love our little community, and they've made a commitment to serving it as well. And we'll be doing the same thing, feeding the homeless, random pop-ups. So stay tuned for that for anybody who wants to volunteer. Anybody in addition to the Lions Club, not just the Lions Club. I also attended the Boys and Girls Club Gala as I'm on the board, and I hosted a table, and it's our biggest fundraiser of the year, and I'm curious to hear what we actually brought in this year, and all that goes back into the community for the children. We have a big construction happening at our Wainimi facility, so some of that will be going towards that to make sure we give the boys and girls of this community just a beautiful building that Oxnard has. So we're looking forward to that construction taking place. And the CERT training. I graduated from that as well, and I would love to be able to get everyone here for city recognition and certification for swearing in. So I'll ask that for a, yes, so want to add that for an agenda item potentially. And I think that is it. I don't think I forgot anything. Moving on to future agenda items. Councilmember, no? Councilmember Gama? Ms. Hernandez?
Well, I wanted to follow up on the public comment that was read earlier. And first of all, I've got a question. Can you send that to us so we can see it?
Yes, I'll send that tomorrow from Dulce Setterfield.
Regarding the January storms and all the data that was being requested?
Yes.
And then at the next meeting, I'll decide whether or not I'll request an agenda item.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything? I would like to put on for, I don't know when, but try to get everyone together, a CERT recognition and swearing in type
Thought
ceremony.
I heard a consensus, so can we assume a consensus on that one?
Sure. Thank you. Okay, seeing nothing else, if everyone is done, we're going to adjourn at 8:46. Sorry, I was close to 8:30.
Good enough.